Everyone has a story, right? Everyone has a story.
He did not make a mistake. That was great stuff by Nick Hamilton.
It's all I know, Nat. I don't know anything else.
I'm Nicolas Hamilton, British racing driver, public speaker, author, born with cerebral palsy.
Oh, that was good.
Well done. The snap was good.
How are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Nat.
It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Absolutely.
And we want to talk a lot about you and your achievements, but to understand those achievements, I think we need some context as to the challenges that you faced through what has been a really remarkable childhood. Can you tell us about your earliest memories of having cerebral palsy? And actually, I think probably we should start by explaining what cerebral palsy actually is, because there'll be many people that don't know, and what caused you to get it.
Yeah, so I was born 2 months premature. I wasn't breathing, and that caused the cerebral palsy, the CP, which is just lack of oxygen to the brain, which then causes brain damage. The type of cerebral palsy I have is spastic diplegia. Now, cerebral palsy is like an umbrella of loads of different types of conditions, and it affects so many different people in so many different ways. So with my diplegia, it's 2 limbs from the waist down. So my right leg, my left leg, but it also affects the tightness and stiffness and the spasticity of the muscles. So just general like coordination and movement is really, really tough. And everything in my life in terms of movement is just stiff. So it's all about trying to lengthen the tendons, try and do physiotherapy to try and make the legs as supple as possible. But obviously every bit of movement that I make with my legs then affects the rest of my body, like my spine, for example. It's almost like a domino effect. So, you know, it affects my ribs and my pelvis and my neck. But yeah, I mean, I'm here complaining, really, I'm not. But, you know, it affects so many people in a more severe way as well. And so, yeah, I'm pretty lucky because I'm still able to do what I want to do. And there's people that are in my situation that have CP, you know, that struggle to walk or talk or communicate. So yeah, I'm very fortunate.
I think I can say with certainty that I've never heard you complain about your CP. You say that you're lucky because you can walk, but actually the prognosis back then was that you wouldn't be able to. I mean, obviously your mum, her waters broke at 31 weeks, so she knew that this, you know, you were very small, like 4 pounds, and obviously that's a concerning time for your mum and dad. It wasn't really until you were 18 months, though, that she knew that it was impacting your movement. Perhaps you weren't hitting the developmental stages that were expected of you. She was told, as was your dad, that you wouldn't walk. I mean, what did that sort of feel like to grow up in? Were they very quick to dismiss that and say, actually, we're going to defy the odds, or was that more on you?
No, it definitely comes from my parents. I mean, it must have been a terrible, you know, time for them to go through when you're told that your son's not going to be able to walk. He's got this condition, spastic diplegia, where the doctors didn't really know much about. They didn't know the limitations, what I would be able to do, what I wouldn't be able to do, and they pretty much just left my parents to it. And obviously, you know, they've had Lewis already, who's fully able-bodied, but with me, it's like new territory. They'd never had a disabled son or child before, so it's all like trial and error. And I guess, you know, I was in an incubator for 6 weeks initially, and then I got diagnosed with this condition. So it's going to be difficult for them to figure out, you know, what do we do next? And my dad is a very unique character. He, you know, he's all about drive and passion and grit and determination, and he doesn't like it when people put like a barrier, you know, on a member of family or himself. So he wanted to make sure that I had that mindset of, yeah, we're going to do what we can and live with what we have and do the best we can with the cards that we've been dealt. So my mum and my dad were pretty strong with me from day one.
I mean, how wrong of the doctors to say he may never be able to walk, but then just to really leave you on your own. You can't put those limitations on another human being. And
yeah, but they also have to be really careful with what they say, you know, so they said that it would, you know, I most likely not walk, but if I was to walk, it'd be at best with some sort of aid or, you know, a stick or a walking frame or something. And to that point, you know, they were correct because I was walking with a frame when I was 4 years old. But in terms of where I would be now, yeah, they didn't know, that I would ever be able to have achieved what I have with my condition.
And what are your earliest memories of actually fighting that outlook, if you like? Obviously, your family are incredibly determined and shape their own destiny, which is phenomenal. But there must have been moments of doubt for you growing up.
Yeah, so I'd say my earliest memory was after my operation. I call it a life-changing operation, which is a tendon release when I was 4 years old. The surgeon went into the backs of my hamstrings, into my groin area, and the backs of my ankles. And the earliest memory is recovering from that, being in plaster cast, from my ankle to my groin. And it was my 4th birthday. And I remember looking down because I was in pain, and some of the cut was quite open, and how they did the plaster cast, it was quite rough, and it was digging into my cut at 4 years old. And I remember looking down and seeing it all red and painful. So that's my earliest memory. And then just going into primary school pretty much and seeing I was the only disabled person there, the only person of colour there as well. And I got to the age of 8 years old and I hadn't seen another disabled person really, so I sort of felt like I was the only disabled person in the world at that point. So trying to mentally overcome that was really difficult at such a young age. And then as I started to grow up, I realised I was different. Every movement that I made was really difficult to make. Either I was really stiff or I was in pain at the same time. But as you said, I've never complained. My dad never, taught me to never complain, to suck it up and keep pushing forward. And so every day has been just a workout, really, both mentally and physically, to get the legs stronger, but also understand that, I've been born with 3 wheels on my wagon, but I've got to make do with what I got.
I guess some would say, though, there is such a thing as righteous anger, and actually perhaps as a child you probably felt like screaming out and saying, hang on a minute, it's not fair, the cards that I've been dealt. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm a huge mummy's boy, and every time I was struggling mentally and physically, I'd go to my mum. And at 8 years old, I was already questioning my purpose. All my friends were able-bodied, they were outside, able to run around and play tag or whatever it was. And I was inside. I remember doing physiotherapy, trying to understand this condition. I had no idea what it was about. And physiotherapy, for an 8-year-old, is like homework, but like painful homework, So every time you're getting stretched and pulled, it hurts. And I just wanted to be like everyone else. So I was questioning, why me? Why have I been given this disability? And how did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong to deserve this condition? And that's where I was at 8 years old. And obviously I looked to my parents for inspiration, because if the parents see the disability as an issue, then the child's going to see the disability as an issue, from my point of view. And so my mum gave me the best advice to keep pushing forward, realise that I'm only 8 years old, I've got my whole life ahead of me, and if time gets tough, I've always got her, I've always got my dad, and we all get through it together. But even though we're together and we do it together, it's only me living with it. So mentally, at 8 years old, you've really got to, if my dad says I can get up that step, it's easy for him to say. I've actually got to figure out how I do it.
Because that was something they were very aware of as you were growing up, wasn't it? Like, if you fell, I remember Linda saying, I just had to hold myself back, so sort of counterintuitive as a mother, not to run and pick him up. I had to let him get up on his own, and that was part of building your resilience. What did that feel like for you?
At the time, it was quite tough, because my dad was on my case of, Nick, don't fall over, pick up your feet and focus on moving forward. And then when I did fall over, my mum actually wouldn't come and help. So I almost felt like I was getting negativity from both directions. But looking back, from my mum's perspective, it must have been an awful thing for her to have to endure, because I had no stability, and it was very easy for me just to fall over and potentially hit my head or whatever. But for her to have the strength to just let me get on with it and basically bounce and roll, she gave me the biggest strength and independence at that point, because she taught me that it's okay to fall, it's okay to injure yourself, and my parents aren't going to be there to dust me down. I've got to dust myself down and continue moving forward, because at some point in my life, I'm going to be doing something on the tube or just going through everyday life, and I'm going to fall over and not be scared of falling over. You need to make sure you're not scared of it, and that, you know, if you go through, you know, cutting your leg or whatever, that you can just dust it down and carry on. And literally that's what my mum and dad instilled in me, which would have been awful and really difficult for them to do, but something I'm very, very grateful for.
Wow. I mean, huge emotional maturity. You had to grow up very fast, didn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, with the way the career went with Lewis, you know, I was around adults a lot of the time, so mentally I was maturing really fast, physically, you know, maturing, but I think at my core, deep down, I was felt very alone, because it was only me trying to deal with this condition. And as much as my family was super, super supportive, it's me that's got to wake up in the morning and think, shoot, my legs still don't work, or I'm in pain today. You know, how do I move forward from that?
You know, you've got this very famous brother who's done incredible things with his career and life. You've picked motorsport as well. Are there any times do you think, I should have gone down a different route, or is it just in your DNA? Is it just part of the Hamilton mindset to be in motor racing? And actually, in many ways, you know, his love for you is clear. I mean, he talks about you glowingly every time, and he's there to support you, and you him. But I suppose with that comes a pressure as well, and perhaps, you know, you feel a little bit in his shadow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, before I answer this question, I want everyone to know that, you know, I'm Lewis's biggest fan. You know, he's got millions and millions and millions of people around the world saying, oh, I'm Lewis Hamilton's biggest fan, but no one's a bigger fan than his baby brother, right? But I don't know how we ended up in motorsport. My dad knew nothing about it. You know, Lewis ended up pretty good at it, and it was our direction that we decided to take. And I eat, sleep and breathe motorsport, and I always wanted to race and drive, but I didn't think I could because of my condition. And you know, I got an opportunity when I was 19 to actually try and drive, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. It's a passion of mine, and I just wanted to. I wanted to achieve things and win races and stuff, but really it was more just the fact that I came from a wheelchair to a racing driver was enough. But obviously, because you're, you know, related to arguably the, you know, most famous racing driver of our generation, you know, you're always going to be sort of in his shadow, and I always have been. So it is hard to try and have your own career path and your own messaging and your own reasoning behind why you're doing certain things without being related to him. I love being related to him, of course, but I have my own identity. And most of the time, you know, people come over to me and they say, hey, how's your brother? Or hey, how's this? Or how's that? And they never actually speak to me as a person. And I'm doing my own thing, you know, but it's you know, much as it's amazing, you know, being a Hamilton, and I wouldn't change it for the world. You know, I have my own purpose, my own reason. I'm my own human being, and yeah, I want people to see me and not just call me Lewis Hamilton's little brother all the time, because I have my own name.
How liberating has it been for you being able to race a car? Like, how freeing is it just to get in there and you can throw the wheelchair and the walking frame to one side and you can just race?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I was born with this condition. I was told I wouldn't, you know, pretty much amount to anything, and physically, obviously, motorsport is super taxing, and as much as it takes me to get there physically, obviously financially as well, you know, I don't take any help from Lewis or my dad. You know, I do everything on my own, and to get to the point of racing the British Touring Car Championship, you know, creating history in the sport, being the first disabled athlete to compete in the championship, to be the first disabled athlete to score points in the championship, and then, you know, get a top 6 result in the BTCC last year, and basically beat able-bodied people at their own game. And I like to class myself as a, you know, Paralympian in the Olympics almost, and I'm just so proud of being able to do that. You know, and there's so many people in the world that don't realise the journey I've been on to get that result, or to get to a point where I can drive past them at 150 mile an hour, you know, and race against all these able-bodied people. You know, it's been such an amazing personal achievement for me, and one thing that I'm definitely proud of. And yeah, I can't believe, you know, I managed to do it. And obviously, I'm not a 7-time former world champion like my bro, but I feel like I've fulfilled, you know, my purpose, and overcome so much that, you know, I don't necessarily need to be a 7-time former world champion to be on the same sort of level as him. I think we both. I'm not trying to compete against him, but to have, you know, done something powerful in motorsport as well, and trying to help disabled people as well and open up doors, I think is something that I'm very proud of.
Let's just go back to Donington and just let's just soak it all up. Just tell me how it felt.
It was the most amazing day, a day that I've been working on for 15, 20 years. And, you know, as much as you're, you know, related to Lewis, and, you know, you have, you know, really positive comments from people being like, oh, wow, you're amazing. You also have some real negative comments, and I've had those throughout my career, whether it's to do with my disability or to do with my racing, and people, you know, basically telling me I'm not good enough, or this or that, or potentially wasting opportunity or a seat. They don't realise, like, if you think about it, I'm a pretty good racing driver for what I have with my disability, and to be able to compete.
Hang on a minute, you're a pretty good racing driver if no one knew about your physical disability.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
you came 6th.
Yeah.
That's astonishing.
Yeah, it's, you know, it was an amazing day, and so, you know, to come across the line and achieve that result, to have Lewis there, to have my dad there, my mum there, you know, all I've done my whole life is watch Lewis have these successful moments, you know, where he gets out of his car and punches the air, and I'm there to hug him and support him and go through that moment with him. Having the roles reversed is something I never thought would ever happen, because when I used to do that with Lewis, I was in my wheelchair, you know, and I was completely sort of stuck in where I was going in my direction of life. And I would never thought that I would be standing aloft my car and punching the air, you know, with a race helmet on in British touring cars, you know, pinnacle of British motorsport, and have my dad there holding me. He was the one holding me out of my car, because if I didn't have support, I wouldn't have been able to stand and punch the air. I would have just fallen backwards, you know. So my dad knew that, and so to have my whole family there, to have this moment that I never thought would ever happen, you know, it meant more than you would ever know. And you know, I took so much emotion in the car, crying my eyes out, you know, because it was just a sense of relief, but also to deal with the negative criticism, the bullying, you know, everything that's gone on in my life, to do everything on my own, get to a point where I'm now racing this car, and I've achieved what I always wanted to. It was the most amazing day, and, you know, take it to the grave with me.
Yeah, no one can ever take that away from you. From a practical point of view, what were the modifications in the car? Like, what was used that facilitated it?
Yeah, sure. So, so obviously with the tightness of my legs, I can't flex my ankles, and you know, you'll see a lot of Formula 1 drivers or drivers in general. You know, they brace their heels on the floor, and they accelerate, you know, with their toes or flexing their ankles. I can't do that. So all of the power comes from the thigh muscle. And so I have to basically have a bend in my leg, so the pedals have to be quite close to me. Then I have a pedal that's like twice the size in terms of width than a normal accelerator, and the same with the brake. And then I have a hand clutch. So instead of 3 pedals, you know, I've got 2. And yeah, that's what's been facilitated for me to be able to race, you know, and achieve what I do.
A representation is clearly everything. So for kids to see you doing what you're doing is something that you didn't have.
No.
You went to a mainstream school. What was the thinking behind that? And you know, you openly said you were the only person of colour and disabled kid in the school. So you're looking around and you're thinking, I can't really relate to many people around me. Was that a deliberate decision by your parents to make you sort of fight upstream and make you stronger?
Yeah, I think it's a deliberate decision from my parents. You'd have to ask my dad and my mum, but really I think that's what they decided because, even though I have this disability and I struggle physically, mentally, I was very, very strong. And I think my parents knew that the world is a able-bodied place, full of able-bodied people doing able-bodied things. And, we can't shy away from the realities of the disability. So putting me into a secondary school full of able-bodied people was, the natural step they felt for me. But as I said, it's like they put me in a place and they make a decision, but I'm the one that's got to deal with it. And so it was a real difficult, like my first day was really tough because I was in a little village school for my first, part of my schooling where I didn't need to walk very far because all of your lessons are in one place. Whereas when you get to secondary school, it's like 5 times the size and you've got to, walk from the design technology block to the maths block to the English block to the science block or whatever it is, and you've got to carry these big heavy bags on your back, and so there was so much more physically for me to do, and I think kids at that stage, they stare at you, they make you feel like you're some sort of alien, like you don't really belong there, and it's because the kids don't understand difference. When you don't see difference and you haven't seen it before, you stare at it. So it was a really, really difficult period of time, and because of the struggles I was having physically, that's when I ended up in a wheelchair, and I was in a wheelchair for 5.5 years before I knew it.
I mean, it sounds like quite a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, and my parents are probably going to watch this and they're going to think, shoot, you felt lonely. But really, yeah, and I feel like I still do today, even though I've achieved all these amazing things and I inspire all these kids and parents, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm just an 11-year-old kid in my wheelchair in the dark, being very lonely and not really understanding where to go in my direction. And I think it's good that you have someone like me around in terms of being vulnerable and saying this is how I felt and it's okay to feel like this, because there's a lot of people that shy away from their mental health and how they feel inside, and I just want to be this person to say, even though I'm a Hamilton and I'm some sort of celebrity or known or doing an interview here or there, it doesn't make me any better off than anyone else, and I still struggle with the things that everybody struggles with on a daily basis. But my disability is always going to be with me, and as much as I adore it, because if I didn't have my disability, I don't think I'd be half the man I am today. I also dislike it at the same time, because it just makes life so much more difficult. But at the end of the day, I was put on this planet for a reason, and I'm just trying to understand my purpose. And I finally feel like I've got to a point where I know why, and I'm just going to continue growing in any direction I can.
It's amazing. How much of the loneliness in childhood was about your cultural heritage and your race as opposed to the disability, or is it impossible to separate the two? Because as you and Lewis have both said, there weren't many black kids in your school.
Yeah,
Growing up in Stevenage, you didn't look around you and see people that looked like you.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I think my parents sheltered me a lot from any racial issues at that point. So I actually didn't sit in my wheelchair and think, shoot, I'm the only person of colour here. And what was actually really grating me was the disability side of things. I don't think people were bullying me because of my colour. They were just, bullying me because I was an easy target. You can pull me backwards in my wheelchair, which is what they were doing, and just leaving me there stranded. And I couldn't get out and fend or defend for myself. So it wasn't because, he's a person of colour, he's mixed race or whatever it is, we're going to bully him. It was more, he can't fight back. I never went home and told my parents.
Why not?
Because my mum is I didn't want my mum to worry. She did enough for me. She'd already sacrificed her life pretty much to pick me up every day, carry me around, and I felt like I was. She would never see me as this, but this is how I felt. It was like, you're such a burden at 4 years old, 5 years old, where my mum had to carry me, and she had like back issues and back problems and stuff like that. The last thing I needed her to do was worry about her son at school. And so I didn't tell her at all, and actually she only found out when she read my book, which was crazy. But you know, because for me, I don't want my parents to have to worry any more than they already have done and deal with any sort of baggage that I have. So I had to figure out my own way of dealing with it. And you know, I went to Lewis for help, and Lewis really helped me with my bullies at school. And then I then had to internalize it and realize, you know, I was trying to almost change myself to fit in with so-called bullies, you know, to try and be cool or whatever it was. And I then started to realize I need to be true to myself and understand who I was. And then by the time I got to 16, you know, that's when I made the decision to get out of my wheelchair and start walking again. Yeah, and I haven't been in my wheelchair now for 16 years.
So Lewis was able to help you. What did that look like at the time?
Well, initially it was Lewis. I was in a wheelchair, so I was like, you know, these kids are bullying me in my wheelchair, Lewis, you know, what do I do? And he was like, well, maybe we need to just make it look cool or do something different. So we started like cambering the wheels, you know, almost like a wheelchair tennis sort of wheelchair, like really sporty. And my brother taught me like wheelies and tricks and stuff, you know, to try and make it something that kids thought was cool. So I remember I was going to school and I was like jumping flights of stairs in it, and I was doing wheelies and spinning around in a circle, and I was just trying to find out ways of being accepted in it. And it lasted 5 minutes. You know, it lasted 5 minutes, and then I was like, shoot, what do I do from here? But when you get to 16 and you know, you're growing a beard, you know, you're getting into girls. Like I wanted to have my first girlfriend or whatever, and I was confined to this wheelchair. I looked absolutely ripped and buff, I would say, because I was pushing my body weight all this time. But internally, I was really, really struggling. It was only me that could make the decision to get out of the wheelchair. And you know, there's a lot of disabled people that don't have the privilege of being able to get out of a wheelchair and walk. And I felt like if I didn't get out at that moment in time, then I wouldn't use my opportunity to actually get out and walk, which is what a lot of disabled people would love to be able to do. So I got out and I started walking and didn't use my wheelchair and just kept building and building and building. And then the racing came along, and then I started training to become a racing driver. And I think the training that I needed to become a racing driver built my legs and the strength that I needed physically.
It's amazing. I mean, it's just an incredible journey, isn't it? We bring it forward to 2011 for the Clear Cup. What are your memories of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd never driven a race car, ever. I think I did one test day in it. Obviously, I had my car modified. My dad decided to put me in the Renault Clio Cup Championship, which is, at the time, the toughest one-make series in the UK. You know, follows the British Touring Car Championship, which is the pinnacle of British motorsport. And my dad didn't chuck a lot of money at it. We didn't have, you know, disposable income that we could just throw into motorsport. And I would never go to Lewis and ask him for his money.
Why not?
Because I do everything myself. I've always done everything myself. Obviously, hopefully from this interview, you'll realise that I don't ask for help ever from anyone.
But is that, I mean, look, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and you're your own person. But is it such a bad thing to ask for help?
No, not at all. And I think people should ask for help. And being able to ask for help is what is being human. You know, you should ask your friend or your parents or whoever to help you in certain areas. But for me, the thing for me was, I really got to learn to live life with this disability on my own, you know, and I can ask for help, and I'm sure if I asked for help, I would get help. But I would feel like it was me sort of cheating on myself in that point. So, you know, when I race cars, for example, all of the funding and the sponsorship has come from me. So when I'm in the car, I've created the opportunity. You know, I'm here because of me, not because my brother's given me a handout. You know, Lewis's money is his money. And even if he offered it to me, which he has done in the past, I'm not going to take it, because, when I get my result at Donington Park like I did, P6 in 2023, I did it all on my own. I got all the funding, I drove out of my skin, I get myself fit and strong, mentally and physically. I didn't ask for anybody to give me a helping hand, and that achievement is my day, my moment, and no one can take it away from me. And it's made it tough, because really I want to be racing every year, and and you would think, being related to Lewis, you get all the money in the world and all that sort of stuff, and you'd be racing every year. But my parents and my brother, they value the pound just as much as anyone else, and I value it so much that I want him to enjoy his success and have his own way, and for me to build it myself, and know that I did it on my own.
And what's next?
Well, I want to get back in the British Touring Car Championship. I would love to. My racing is very powerful for me. It's what gets me up in the morning to continue overcoming my condition and being as strong as I can. So hopefully I'll be on the grid for 2025 if I get the sponsorship together. I do a lot of public speaking, so I fly around the world, speaking to big corporates, and trying to just get my story out there and inspire as many people as I can, and a lot of ambassadorial work, and I'm already doing that, and really at the end of the day, if I can just help just one person every day, just inspire them, help them progress in any direction they want to, then I'm serving my purpose. So I don't really know what's next. I'm just going to continue living my life as I am. If I get to race, that's great, and through my motorsport I want to start bringing more accessibility and disability within motorsport. I want people to realise that disability is accepted within motorsport, and if then I get to a point where I leave motorsport, I want to know that I've created something for other people to look back on, because really I'm the only person of colour in British touring cars and the only disabled person. So by the time I leave, I want more disabled people in and around motorsport, whether it's changing a tyre or working for the hospitality team or whatever it is. I want people to be there, not because of me, but because I've opened the door and shown that this motorsport is accessible for disability.
It feels to me like you and Lewis have just got this incredible perspective on life, that it isn't just about success on the track. It's about this greater sense of purpose, and it's about trailblazing that and actually leaving a sport in a better place than you found it.
Yeah,
Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, Lewis honestly is the most amazing human being. The love and passion and power I have for him, how proud I am of what he's done, both on track and off track, is the most amazing thing. And Lewis is trying to do everything he can to open up doors for people with colour and more diversity and inclusion in the sport. But once his time at Ferrari is done, or he decides to leave the sport, what's everyone going to do about it to continue that legacy? That's the thing that people need to worry about once Lewis goes.
Well, hopefully it's not a worry, but it's a challenge, and it feels like there has to be people to carry on and take the baton from him and run with it.
Absolutely.
But hopefully he's opened up enough doors, which you certainly have. I mean, from the outside looking in, you've both changed a whole generation's perspective.
Yeah,
and that's huge.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, Lewis more so than me, but I want to have my opportunity to do more for disabled people. Lewis is doing it more in a racial side and creating more diversity in that sense. I want to look into disability and bring more disabled people into motorsport. In a real powerful way. You don't have to be a racing driver to be a part of the sport. There's so many amazing jobs within motorsport that can open up opportunities for disabled people. And if I get my chance to get back on the grid for touring cars, I'll be trailblazing on track, but my off-track work is more important actually to create a legacy for disabled people and really help them, because at the end of the day, that's what I'm here to do. I'm no better than the next person. I'm just living my life to the best of my ability, and just trying to do what I can to do something powerful. And I'm not there yet. I've done you know, okay at the moment. But yeah, we'll see where we go in the next 5 to 10 years.
Trust me, the privilege is all ours.
Thanks
so
Nat.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks
so
very
good
much.
to talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot.